Howdy, that's a different start, isn't it? This is the ninth, maybe? Certainly the last video in my series about learning the notes on a DG Melodeon like this. In the previous episodes, if you followed them through, you would have learnt what every note on every button does on the whole keyboard, and hopefully you would have figured out that a lot of the notes on one row are the same as the one on the other, and sometimes they work in the same direction, sometimes they work in different directions, and it takes a while to internalize all that to really get the hang of it. So hopefully in time, if you've not done it yet, that's what you want to aim at, that you understand what all of the keyboard does, and you know what all the note names are, and you know all the alternatives, because the more you do that, the more you find you've got little tricks when you're playing to use a different note to make fingering easier, or to include different notes so that you can make a semitone twiddle going on for ornamentations. All sorts of things like that all come into play once you understand how it works. Now, you may have noticed though that there's something I've completely omitted to talk about during any of the previous videos, and that is that the instrument actually has two sides to it, and it's not just this, but over here you've got the bass side, and this is a whole different thing again. And I won't go too much into what we do with basses generally, but just to keep with the theme of the videos, I'll just go through first of all what the notes are, but also I'll relate those notes to what we can play on this side, which you may not have done before. It depends on how far you've gone with theory and exploring things. So we've got notes over here. We've got 8 buttons on a standard 2 row, that's what you normally get, and you probably already know that those buttons work in pairs. So that's a pair, and that's a pair, and that's a pair, and that's a pair. So 2 pairs on the inner row, 2 on the outer row, and for each pair there is a bass note, a low one. Actually, that's not a bass note, I'm totally the wrong one. There we go, a bass note and a chord. I think I heard my red nose again on that. And we get that on all of them. So each pair has a bass note. So 4 of the buttons do bass notes and 4 do chords, and 3 of those pairs have a different bass note and chord depending on which direction you're going on, and 1 pair have the same note either way. That's kind of unique on the instrument. There's nothing else on this side that works like that. There's a name for that, I believe. They're called unisonic basses. Anyway, so where do we start with this? Probably the note that we start on, that most people learn first, is this pair over here on the outer row in this corner, and if we push that we get that. So we've got a G note, a G bass, and then a G major chord. And so G was an important note here. That was our root note when we started out. That was the first note we ever learnt here. So that one and they match up. Well, they should do. They're both G. They're in different octaves, but they're both G. That's good. And then earlier in the videos, at one point I actually showed you how to make a right hand chord of G major. So we went G, B, D, put them all together, and we got that. Well, on this side, this button here does the same thing. On just one button you get all those 3 notes together. Again, it sounds different because they're in a different octave, and then there's different voicings going on and things, but basically it's the same chord. So if you play this, you can play that together, or you could wiggle your fingers on those and play just different G notes on the push, and it will match this one. It all works because they're all actually the same notes. There we go. And so that's the G on that one. If you were to pull on that one, you would get a D bass. We're pulling here, and you would get a D major chord. And can we associate that with this side? Not very easily, not on this particular instrument, because this instrument doesn't have any pulled D notes anywhere on it. All the D notes on this one, on both rows, are all pushed. So we can't actually play a full D chord by pulling it. What we can do is play the other notes in the chord, which are an F sharp and an A, and so those on, they've got to be on the pull. So the F sharp and the A, when they're pulled, are on the inner row, which is about, so we could play, so that works together, but we just don't have over here that D. But so if you're pulling those, they're going to match up. So that's those two. Talking about D, it so happens that on these two, this is the other two on the outer row on the side there, if you push those, you get D as well. So now we already know that we've got loads of D's on the push on this side, and to make the full chord of D major, we need a D and an F sharp and an A on a push, and it so happens that that's exactly what we have, of course, on our outer row. So D, F sharp, A, play them together, you've got that chord, and we did that in the video earlier, so that matches up. And again, you could play those in any octave. You could just fiddle about, keep pushing, keep playing that, and you're going to stay on the outer row, and it's going to work, and it's going to sound fine. Yeah, it sounds good. So that's A and, oh no, that's not A, that's G and D, but A was the next one on my mind, so I was thinking ahead there. So A is what you get if you pull on these two outer buttons. That's an A bass, and that's an A major chord. So what can we do with an A on here? Can we play an A on the pull? And yes, we can. If you know your notes now, you'll know that there's an A pull on the inside row on the same button as your root G note that we started out with all that time ago. So that works. And what are the other notes for A major? A, and then it goes to C sharp, and then it goes to E. And we want all of those to be pull notes. Well, so what can we actually finger these here? So let's think. We've got an A pull there, and then we want a C sharp. Well, the C sharp is definitely only on the outer row. We already discovered that much earlier on, so we know we're going to have to cross rows to make this one. So it's there. So there's a bit of a stretch between the A and the C sharp. And then you want an E, and the E's are on both rows, and they're both pull notes, so you could play either one, but I think it's most comfortable to stay on the outer one to make this chord. So we can play an A chord like that, and then we can make it match with that one. There we go. So that's another basic right hand chord that is going to match up with the chords and basses that you've got here. So that covers the outer row there. Next we have let's go for these two. These are the inner row buttons that are adjacent to the G and D ones we did at the start. And this is the unisonic buttons. This is C when you pull it, and the same thing when you push it. You get a nice drone effect with that. So what can we do with that? Most usually you're going to pull those C's. It's useful sometimes for pushing for a nice sound as well, but usually it's most commonly used for pulling. And so can we on this side play a C chord on the pull to match this? So does that work? So we know that a C note is available on the pull and only on the inner row. There's only a C, because on the outer one there's C sharp instead. So we're going to have to use a C note there to start with. And then what's the next one we could use? We could use C, D, E is the next one in the chord. So we know there's an E on this outer row on the pull, or there's one on the inner row on the pull. Which one are we going to use? I suggest using the outer one. You'll see why in a second. That one. And then we want a G note. Now G notes are on both rows, but we want a pulled G note, and the pulled G note is only on the outside. Hopefully you've remembered all this and you just naturally know it now, but I'm just going through it. So C, pull E, pull G, and that's going to make you a full C chord, and that's going to match that one. What you could do, if you didn't want to finger it like that and you were more down this end, you could actually have the pulled E and the pulled G in the lower octave and actually do what's known as an inversion and change the order of the notes in the chord. So we still want the C on that side because we don't get a choice, but then we're going to play the E on the lower one and the G on the lower one as well. So we can do that, and that's still a C chord. Yeah. Can we do a C chord when we're pushing? The answer is no, because what we would need is a pushed C note, and we only have pulled C notes on this one. We would want a pushed E note, and we have E's on both rows, but none of those are pushed ones, so that's no good. And we'd need a pushed G. Well, that's all right, we do have that one, so that's the only note there. We can, so that one fits, but the others wouldn't. So you can't really do the same trick with that. So that leaves us one pair left, these two here. Now this is where things get a bit more mysterious. I've not really talked in these videos much about minor scales. I did mention them at one point briefly, but it's a different pattern of tones and semitones that makes the scale sound sad as opposed to the major sort of more happy sound. It's for another video, another time really, to discuss that. But on this side we have an E bass note, and then we have an E chord, and that chord is a minor chord. So that is something that we've not really dealt with, but what I can say is that the minor chord does contain notes that we know about and are familiar. Specifically they are E and G and B, and we're playing it on the pull. So can we play an E, a G and a B on the pull? And on the outer road we absolutely can, because we have here the E, and then there's a G next to it, and then a B next to that. They're all on the pull, so if you just do those three right next to each other and pull that one, that's a very common thing to use actually on Melodeons, this E minor. You can add the top one as a bit. Now if you want the top note, you've got to miss one out and then use the little finger on it. There we go, there's your E minor. Okay, so that leaves one option left on the same pair of buttons and pushing them, and this is where it starts to get weird because different instruments are set up in different ways. You may get, well, you'll definitely get on this note a B bass. Should be that. However, the chord could be a major chord or it could be a minor chord. Which one's that? So a B minor chord would be the notes B, D and F sharp. So we can play a B minor chord here by doing a, on the push, because that's a push chord, push the fourth, that one, that's the B, and then a D, that's it. So does that sound right? alternatively you would have a B major chord, which then would need you to use accidentals, but that would need, let's say, so it would be a B and then a D sharp, which is the same thing as an E flat, and you would need that on the push, but we have it out on the pull, so we can't do a B major chord on this side with the basses or the accidentals that are normally there. So, what do you think? Major or minor? Leave it to you to decide that one. Your instrument might be different, and sometimes it might be neither, because in the chord sometimes you take out or tape over the third note of the chord, which means that it's not a minor chord or a major chord. But I'm rambling. That's the end of that anyway. I've been through each of the major chord basses and that minor chord bass as well, just as an example of what these are about and how it relates over here. There's lots more you can do with this, but that's for another video another time. So that really is the end of this course, this sequence, this whole bunch of videos about learning the notes on your DG Melodeon. There's loads to it. It's a lot of me sitting here rambling and pressing one thing at a time, and if you try and watch it all at once it would be amazingly boring, I've no doubt, but a little bit at a time, and adding just one extra thing that you know onto it and just working through it over weeks or months, eventually you'll get there and you'll be able to understand what's going on the whole keyboard. And it's not a straightforward thing. It's logical, as I said right at the beginning, but it doesn't seem like that when you're first learning it. So hopefully that's been helpful for you. If it has, yeah, press the like button or give me a message or something like that, because I only tend to make these when I think that it's going to be useful, and if no one cares, perhaps it's not worth the bother. So thanks for watching. Cheers for now. Hopefully that helps, and enjoy your playing.